Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the No BS Zone. I'm Bernie Goldberg, for those of you who don't know, and I'm here with John Daly, the man that Donald Trump may go after next because he criticizes Donald Trump from time to time. How you doing, John?
I'm doing okay, Bernie. How about you?
Well, I'm okay personally, but I'm not okay with what our president is doing vis-a-vis John Bolton.
Right.
10 seconds of background. Late last week, the FBI got search warrants from two federal judges, one in Maryland where John Bolton lives, and the other in Washington where he has his office, to search the premises, which indicates that there's something worth looking into, granted. But this is about vindictiveness. This is about vengeance. This is about retribution. And this is about Donald Trump sending a message to anybody who plans on criticizing him. You do so at great peril. We will come after you. We will make your life miserable. We may charge you with a crime and you may go to prison. John Bolton's crime, in quotation marks, is that he's been a frequent critic of Donald Trump.
No, okay.
Anybody who wondered if Donald Trump's second term was going to be one about getting even, you don't have to wonder anymore. This is really bad stuff. This is bigger than John Bolton. This is a message, as I say, keep quiet or else. And I'm not alleging that Donald Trump picked up the phone and called Pam Bondi, who then picked up the phone and called Kash Patel and said, send the FBI out to raid John Bolton's premises. He didn't have to pick up a phone. Pam Bondi is one of those toadies who knows what the president wants. He's made very clear how he feels about John Bolton. So if the president wants John Bolton punished, Pam Bondi will do it. She doesn't need a phone call from Donald Trump. This is I'm just so disgusted with how this second term is playing out. I'm totally disgusted. It's dangerous. It's wrong. The left is correct about what they're saying about him in this case. John, you better take over because I'm going to get real annoyed real quick.
No, Bernie, you suggested this topic over the weekend, and we were thinking about what to talk about in the episode. You didn't know at the time I was writing a column on this. It should be out. Yeah, it's out on the website right now if people
Right,
want to check it
right.
out. But as I said in that piece, I'm absolutely, and you kind of alluded to the same thing. I'm absolutely open to the idea that Bolton may have mishandled classified information, and if it turns out he did, I have no problem with him facing an appropriate, punishment, the legal consequences of that. I said the same thing when it was Hillary, Trump, Biden, these other people that mishandled classified material. That said, like you, it's pretty obvious to me that Bolton is being targeted for political retribution, just like when Trump removed his Secret Service protection about 3 minutes after he was sworn into office this time. Bolton has been a thorn in Trump's side for a long time. Kash Patel, a couple years, even put Bolton on this enemies list that he came up with that he put in his book. I think this was 2022. But the biggest tell of all, I think, is that we all know Trump doesn't take classified material in national security protocol seriously himself. It's not something him and his team is particularly concerned about. We've seen this in other areas too. Um, so yeah, I think this is a problem. I don't know if you saw this, Bernie, but Trump is now threatening to open investigations into Chris Christie. After,
Absolutely. I was just now made a note. Chris Christie wanted to
yeah,
talk about that. Go ahead.
no, Christie, I guess I don't know if he was out on multiple Sunday shows or just one, but very critical of Trump. He's been criticizing him for a while, but Trump saw this, didn't like it, so he put something out on Truth Social, bringing up past Christie controversies, most that were where Christie was cleared, and say, well, maybe we ought to look into this again, and
This
so yeah,
this is
this is
what's
that's a
dangerous.
terrible.
This is precisely, John, what's dangerous. Chris Christie in 2013 was involved, or his office was involved with a shutdown of the George Washington Bridge. One of the lanes, a big traffic jam, was a mess. More than 10 years later, Donald Trump brings up, maybe we should look into Chris Christie, right after Chris Christie is on ABC's Sunday program, criticizing Donald Trump. This is serious stuff. And the MAGA crowd better get on board with how serious this is. This is wrong. If you thought going after Donald Trump was wrong when they raided Mar-a-Lago, it wasn't. But if you thought it was wrong, then you got to think this is wrong also. And by the way, you mentioned how Donald Trump took Bolton's security contingent away from him. The Iranians targeted Bolton for assassination.
Mhm.
That's not an exaggeration. They wanted to put a hit out on him. Trump knew that, and he takes his security detail away, sending a message to Iran that it's a lot easier to get Bolton now that he doesn't have federal government security. How petty is that? How wrong is that?
Oh, it's terrible, and it's interesting. You said MAGA needs to get involved in this and see that this is bad. The early signs are not good for that, Bernie. I mentioned in my piece that Greg Gutfeld, for one, is defending Trump's treatment of Bolton because of how Trump was treated under the Biden administration, which to me makes absolutely no sense on any level. Bolton's a Republican. He's no friend of the Democratic Party. He had nothing to do with any of these charges that were pressed against Trump, including the ones that were legitimate, the ones that some people don't think were legitimate. None of this makes any sense. It's getting to the point where just anything is okay, for the leader of my side to do something based on, point a finger at something that somebody else did on the other side, and then it's okay. And that's getting into some pretty serious stuff right now based on the cost that we're seeing.
This is an important point you just made. If you want to make a case, and just stay with me on this, if you want to make a case, well, they went after Trump for political reasons in New York, let's say Letitia James. So we're going to get even with Letitia James and go after her. I get it. It's vindictive and all, but I get it. Going after Bolton because of what the Biden administration, the raid on Mar-a-Lago. What the hell did Bolton have to do with that?
Yeah.
Bolton had nothing to do with that. But somehow, if you went after Trump at Mar-a-Lago, it's okay to go after. This is too stupid. This is just too stupid.
Now, I've been preaching about the dangers of whataboutism for a while, Bernie, and this is the next evolution. It's not about justifying behavior against the other side. It's about justifying any behavior against anyone based on the other side.
Exactly. It's the next step in stupidity. Again, I may not be. You may disagree with my position, but if Letitia James went after Trump in a clearly political way,
And she did, absolutely.
and then if he sends his Justice Department to say, well, she had a mortgage issue, and we're going to look into that and maybe bring charges again. You know what? I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. I admit it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I admit it. But going after Bolton for what Letitia James did or what Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, did, Bolton's response should be, what the hell did I have to do with any of that?
Right.
What are you coming after me for? You want to go after Merrick Garland? Go after Merrick Garland. Don't come after me. Anyway, this is just wrong. There was a piece in the New York Times. I just want to read part of it. Despite the justice system's many imperfections, Americans long had reason to trust that federal officials would not target people for investigations without evidence. Under the Trump administration, that assumption is disappearing. The president has given all Americans reason to believe that justice is now applied selectively and unfairly. That's another thing we should be concerned about. We should have trust in the FBI. We need to have trust in the Justice Department that they're not going to go after you for political reasons. If the Biden administration did, that's on the Biden administration. And now Trump is using his Justice Department to go after critics. This is so wrong. This is so freaking wrong.
And you cited the New York Times there. Some people may listen to that and say, well, that's the New York Times. Wall Street Journal wrote a much more scathing piece editorial board about this very same topic.
Right. Well, let's go from Trump and Bolton to Trump and Ukraine. First of all, I don't think Vladimir Putin is interested in peace.
No.
I think the only peace that he would sign on to is if Ukraine became part of the Russian Federation and the president of Ukraine reported to Moscow. Now, Donald Trump said, and this is as close to a red line as you can get, Donald Trump said that if there's no ceasefire, there would be, Donald Trump's words, very severe consequences. Putin said no to a ceasefire, and as we speak, you and I right now, John, there has been no severe consequences. That was a bright red line that Trump put down. Maybe there will be severe consequences. I hope there will be. But my guess is that Trump is going to say, I'm washing my hands of this whole thing. Putin doesn't want peace. Zelensky's not going to give in enough to create some kind of peace accord. I'm not going to have anything to do with this. I never gave a damn about Ukraine in the first place. I only cared about getting a Nobel Prize. And if I'm not getting a Nobel Prize, screw both of them. I'm washing my hands. Now, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope he takes a side. I hope he takes Ukraine's side over Russia. I hope he punishes Russia. I hope that's the case. And by the way, I give Donald Trump credit for at least trying to get people together, to get the two sides together. I give him credit for bringing in the heads of European countries to try to get some kind of peace accord going. But I don't think he gives a damn about Ukraine. I don't think he cares about anything but himself and the Nobel Prize that he's shooting for. And if Putin isn't going to cooperate, I only hope Putin suffers severe consequences as Trump promised, but I'm not holding my breath at all on that happening.
Yeah, regarding your point about the Nobel Peace Prize, you talked about this, and we actually both talked about this in the last episode we recorded. And you don't know about this, Bernie. I'm bringing it up for the first time here. Afterwards, one of our listeners canceled their subscription because of it, saying that position, Bernie, about Trump winning that was biased. So I wanted to comment on that. I know we people unsubscribe for disagreements all the time, but folks, President Trump has been very vocal about his desire to win a Nobel Peace Prize. He has brought it up several times. He's been sending his surrogates out on television to push this really strange narrative. Bernie, you may have heard it, that since taking office last January, Trump has already stopped 6 wars. I've heard some of his people say 7. It seems to go back and forth between 6 and 7, but that's what that messaging is about. He's campaigning for the Nobel. Plus, he literally, this has been reported, called the Nobel Committee himself to tell them that he deserves the prize. So yeah, this is sort of an obsession of his, and I think.
Do you remember the first name of the person who canceled?
What's that?
Do you remember the first name of the person who canceled, the person you're referring to?
No.
Okay, we'll call him Bill.
Okay. I don't remember it, yeah, unfortunately.
My message to Bill and to the MAGA crowd is, don't blame me for stuff that your dear leader is doing. If your dear leader wants a Nobel Prize and would be willing to toss either side over, either Russia or Ukraine over the side to get a Nobel Prize, don't hold that against me. Your boy does crazy ass shit, and you're blaming, pardon my language, and you're blaming me. You're saying, well, Bernie said this and I'm canceled. Well, cancel if you want.
Right.
I'll survive. But it's a bigger point that I've wanted to make in the past, and that is the MAGA crowd is so in love with Donald Trump that they act stupid at times. I'm not saying they are stupid. I'm saying they act stupid at times. Donald Trump does something outrageous. I comment on it. You comment on it, John. And we're the bad guys. We're the
Yeah.
bad guys. No.
No, like
Hold Donald Trump accountable for what Donald Trump does.
no, I get you. You're preaching to the choir with me. It's the gymnastics that people have to go through sometimes to pretend that Trump's motivations are different than what he himself has put out there.
Right.
Than what he's talking about. I know that a lot of people on the right say we shouldn't judge Trump by his words. We should judge him by his actions. That's always been that argument has all kinds of flaws on its own.
Well,
But
hold on just a half a second.
mhm,
One of our subscribers, the best known subscriber that we have, his first name is Bill. Okay, let's leave it at that. I think
okay,
he feels that way. Trump says crazy things. Who cares? Judge him by his actions. Would you judge Joe Biden by his actions if he said half the things Trump said? Would you treat Joe Biden the same way you treat Donald Trump? If Biden did half the things Trump does? No. So don't tell me you only care about what Trump does, not what he says. Because if Biden said these things, you wouldn't cut him any slack. But you're cutting Trump slack? No. This is about you hate liberals, you hate Democrats, so anything Trump does is okay with you. Just stop. Just
no,
I'm glad
you're
you.
absolutely right. Yeah. No, it's you're absolutely right. Just one more note on the Nobel thing. I think even if Trump were, and we brought this up last time, but even if Trump were to achieve peace in a good way, for Ukraine, I still don't think the Nobel Peace Prize would just based on who the people that decide make those decisions would give that to him. I do think it would be sort of a funny troll on their part if they were. We saw Bernie where First Lady Melania Trump wrote a letter to Vladimir Putin about the human rights violations being committed by Russia, including against the children of Ukraine. I would find it sort of personally amusing if the committee awarded her the Nobel Peace Prize, just to watch the fallout from that. I can't even imagine the Oval Office meltdown that would go down from that, Bertie. But I don't think she'll get it either.
It would be nice if the Nobel Committee gave the Peace Prize to John Bolton.
That would be good. That would be good. Yeah,
Want to drive? He'd indict the Nobel Peace Prize Committee. He'd find a reason to bomb Norway or Sweden or wherever the hell they give out the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't even know, and I get why Trump wants it. He likes to be awarded things and everything, but the Nobel has been so meaningless for so long. I think honestly, when they gave it to Barack Obama,
Yeah,
literally just for winning an election, that was ridiculous. Why would anybody put credibility in that thing after that move?
that's when they jumped the shark.
True, true.
Anyway, we've gone from the ridiculous, not to the sublime, but to the more ridiculous. Cracker Barrel.
Yes.
You wrote a column about this. I'm going to let you take this one.
Yeah, thanks, Bertie. So I almost feel like the story doesn't require a lot of background because of how big of a deal it sadly became last week. But I'll do a quick summary. Cracker Barrel restaurants have been suffering from declining sales for a very long time. It's lost half of its value in the last 5 years alone. The chain is losing customers. I think a lot of them are just sort of dying off,
Yeah,
being
exactly.
that a big part of their customer base over the years has been older people. That's sort of who they've sort of focused on. So in hopes of attracting younger diners, they revamped their decor a bit. Really, and when I say a bit, I'm kind of serious. It's not a lot. They modernized their dining rooms. They made the walls brighter, and they changed their logo, removing an image of this old fellow leaning on a barrel. They instead went with the sort of the sleeker all text version. This caused a right wing meltdown, Bernie, with many people claiming the restaurant had gone woke and calling for boycotts, which none of that makes sense to me. And I sort of have a theory behind this, Bernie, that I wrote about in the column. I can bring it up in a minute, but I'm curious, what is your take on this story?
Well, let me give the right wing's side of this. They said the old guy, an old white guy, by the way, represented traditional values. This is such crap. It represented nothing. What was the last line in your column?
Some people just want to fight.
That's what it's about. We could talk for another 10 minutes, but that's what it's about. Some people just want to fight. So, and this is part of the whole culture thing that's so debilitating. It's just so wrong. They're making an issue of Cracker Barrel changing its freaking logo. This is like the stuff of comedy. And
It really is.
they did this because they don't. Now they took a white guy out. They took a white guy out. Jeez,
Yeah, it's funny because I kept seeing
getting up and
myself.
leaving. Now. I'm thinking of getting up and leaving. I'm letting you finish this out. This is
Well, I
so.
thought. Oh, no, I do want to add one more before we shut things down here. the, I looked into who this guy was on the logo. He was actually a family friend of the creators of Cracker Barrel. I think it's funny how people keep talking. They took this, and I said old guy as well. He was actually my age. The guy, he wasn't even really that old. I was sort of old, but yeah, it's
He
wild. And
somehow
go ahead.
represented. He somehow represented traditional American values. Like what? Like sitting on a rocking chair.
Overalls. Overalls, I guess. I don't know. The guy's wearing. I've never worn overalls in my life, Bertie. But maybe I'm going against tradition in that some
They,
way.
they, they didn't substitute that logo for one that said George George Floyd is the greatest American of all time. They just changed it to they took out the picture.
Right. You know what's interesting too, Bertie, and I didn't realize this when I wrote the column. I read about it later. The logo they have now was the one with almost identical to what they started with decades ago, and then before later changing it to the guy with the suspenders. So it's really not even really breaking from tradition in that sense. It's just going back to what they had before. So yeah, I think the broader picture here, there are a lot of people that are convinced that American culture is under attack on virtually every front. And so I think they view any kind of change away from tradition or really just anything they're used to. They're inclined to view it as another battle that they need to take up arms for. And like I said, some people just want to fight. I think it's an unhealthy thing. And it's not just a silly thing, it's also an unhealthy thing because I think it comes
If
across in all kinds of other parts.
If Donald Trump weighed in on this and said, "I love the new logo," the MAGA crowd would love the new logo.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
All right, one more before we go, and it's my Schadenfreude is a word. uh, In case you don't know, that means taking joy in somebody else's misery. I'm taking joy in the fact that Newsmax wrote a check for almost $70 million to settle a lawsuit with Dominion Voting Systems because, like Fox News, that settled a lawsuit with Dominion for almost $1 billion, $787 million. because they made up crazy conspiracy theories they put out. Whether they made them up or not, they disseminated them, that Dominion was taking, the machines were taking votes that were registered for Donald Trump and turning them over to Joe Biden. There's no basis for this. Dominion said, we're not putting up with this. This is hurting our business. They want a major settlement from Fox, now a major settlement from Newsmax. And this is the headline I wrote for the piece sums it up. It's the high cost of irresponsible journalism, because that's what this is. This is irresponsible journalism. They thought they thought this is what Donald Trump wanted to hear. This is what he was saying, that Dominion, that the election was rigged. Dominion was a fall guy that they thought they can get away with because their audience wanted to hear that bull. And Dominion said, hold on, we're not putting up with this. And they had to write checks. Great. I hope they write another check, because Fox has another, a $2 billion lawsuit from Smartmatic. Is that what it's called?
Smartmatic, yep.
And they're suing basically for the same thing, saying that they were defamed because Fox said that their voting machines were used to rig the election. I hope Rupert Murdoch writes another big check, and then I hope he fires the people responsible. And he figures he couldn't fire them when a lawsuit was still pending, because that would be admitting guilt. But I hope after this is done, every moron who sat in an anchor chair at Fox gets handed their walking papers. I don't care how famous they are, how popular they are with the Fox audience. I hope they lose their jobs. And if that makes me a bad guy, good.
Well, I share your satisfaction on this, Bernie, in part because I think this is really one of the few instances of bad actors actually paying a price for their role in the Stop the Steal hoax, which subjected people don't understand how many lives that affected. It subjected a lot of innocent people, election workers, public officials, to just terrible harassment, death threats. People had to move from where they lived. It ended the political and professional careers of some good people. I would argue it led to January 6th, assaults on police officers, desecration of our Capitol. Trump never really had to pay a meaningful price for it. He, was reelected. Some of his stooges did. Sidney Powell was punished. Those who participated in the assault on the Capitol, they were pardoned, so they're now off the hook. But when it comes to the news media organizations, they ultimately did not get away with this. I think they still their viewers still believe a lot of it. They still kind of hint at it sometimes, but it's good to see someone at least being held, accountable for what happened.
Many people, and I think you're one of them, said that a second Trump term would be filled with yes men and yes women, people who, and I said no, that won't be the case. That won't be the case because they saw what happened to Sidney Powell. They saw what happened to Rudy Giuliani. They're not going to put themselves in jeopardy of getting indicted and convicted and thrown in jail if it comes to that. No. This time, I was dead wrong. I was dead freaking wrong. Trump said the first time around, I had too many people who stood up for what they believed in, and I don't need people who stand up for what they believe in. I need people who stand up for what I believe in. And he hired a bunch of toadies, a bunch of sycophants, and that's what we're witnessing. That is what we're witnessing. And I don't think it's going to get any better.
No. I mean, it is such a springboard to power, to do this. I mean, you look at all the different cabinet members. So many were not qualified for that job. We're seeing them make big mistakes, do really dumb things. And this is, if all it took was schmoozing up to Trump, was to, in some cases do political favors for him, that sort of thing. And this is the reality, and I don't think what happened to people like Sidney Powell and to some extent Rudy Giuliani was scary enough in the minds of some people to not jump on this train. But I think it's again, it's not a good situation, and the country's paying for it.
They're not even embarrassed. That's what gets me. Sometimes you do something and at least you're embarrassed by what you did. They can't open their mouths at a cabinet meeting without prefacing their remarks. Donald Trump will say, tell us what's going on at Homeland Security. Tell us what's going on in Energy Department. Tell us what's going on at the State Department. And they all begin the same way. Thanks to your leadership, Mr. President. Thanks to your leadership, we're able to. It's like they're talking to Kim Jong-un. I mean, that's how.
It is. Yeah. I remember we saw some of this in the first Trump administration. For some reason it always cracked me up because Pence, I have much more respect for Pence, especially after January 6th, but he always had this phrase he would always use where he'd carry on about Trump's broad-shouldered leadership. And that just always cracked me up because I wondered who came up with that line, because it was just he would say that over and over again. And I haven't seen that in the new Trump term yet, but I'm sure stuff that isn't less embarrassing has been said. But I always got a kick out of that for some reason.
I need a break.
I don't blame you, Bernie.
This took too much out of me. But now you know why we call it the no BS zone, because
That's right.
there's much damn BS out there that somebody needs to call it out, and that's John's job and my job. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't enjoy it, I hope at least we gave you something to think about. Tell us what you think and tell your friends about us. John, see you next time.
Sounds great, Bernie. Take care, everybody.